right, folks, grab a seat and pour your drink neat as Whiskers and Whiskeys presents our conference preview, the last one for the SEC. I'm Mike. With me is EJ. How's it going, pal?
It's going great. It's sleep's getting better. I exacted some revenge after feeling disrespected last time we recorded. I great update. Had a couple of really big nail biters in the playoffs, including stopping Bama on the 1 yard line as time expired.
Huge
to win the game. Up three. Up three. So
what play were they run? Like, where were they to get to the 1 yard line? You were up three. You stopped them on the 1 yard line as time expired. What was the down and distance whenever? Like, could they have kicked the field goal and just sent to overtime?
Nope.
They deep ball you.
Yep. So here's the deal. I'm very much an offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
While I'm playing this, I don't play defense. I sim the defense. Even as a head coach, I'm still.
Oh, you sim the defense?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I'm all offense. That's it. That's what I do. And it can be a blessing at times, and it can be terrible because I am ultimately, sometimes my defense is great and get some stops. Other times it's like a shootout and I have to keep up. So I will say though, because I don't play defense and I decided to at the end of that game, I very well almost cost my team because.
Oh, so you were playing defense when this happened?
Yeah. So I go up three. There's probably about 50 seconds left in the game, and they hit a big pass. Eventually they get to midfield with about 4 seconds left, and I thought I picked a defense that would have put everyone way back. It didn't. It was eventually a 50-50 ball, two offensive players, two defenders, and they fucking caught it. And thankfully my guy made the tackle at the 1 yard line.
Wow.
So I very well should have lost that game, and I probably should have just let my defense sim it.
Oh man. I mean, well, but you never know.
Did nothing.
Dude, you never know, because I think that both in my natty for sure. Like, I was up, I had a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter, and I ended up losing by 3. I think that the game just turns the fucking up a notch.
Oh, it definitely does.
In the playoffs for sure. So
yeah. So that was crazy. Then the semifinal game, Ohio State, I was up 7. Kind of had to punt, which I knew was going to bite me in the butt. Knew they were going to end up scoring when I simmed it, and then I had about a minute 10 to get down the field. I did. Was able to kind of run the clock out. To get to a point where I could run the clock out to kick the last second field goal, which was very close. And because it was a neutral field, the kicking wasn't absolutely bonkers, which was nice. And then get to the natty against Michigan and handle them. I can usually tell. My offense is very much predicated on can I run the ball? And those first 2 games, nope. As soon as I started running the ball against Michigan, I knew I was going to be okay.
That's how I was against Penn State. Oregon and Ole Miss had a very balanced attack. That's interesting, man. Wow. That's well, you know what? It's funny because when you text me, or I saw the messages from you whenever it was 11 o'clock last night, you beat Bama. And then at 12, you text me the Michigan screenshot.
Yeah.
How did you complete those games? 3 games in an hour. I'm like, super sim. So there we go.
I don't play defense. And it's for the better of my program, and it's worked for me thus far. Because the defense I haven't figured out yet, because I traditionally am a pass rusher when I like to play.
Yeah.
That's just not working for me, especially when I have inferior talent.
Yeah.
So maybe if I played a floating linebacker, but I don't know if I don't know that I have the hogs on defense to make me be better. So I think it's better for me to just leave it up to the computer, and then I'll just play catch up on offense.
Yeah, I still play as a D lineman. I'm as an end. I'm working on, at some point I'm going to work on being a middle linebacker and switch stick and all that stuff. But like,
Yeah.
I took Florida's offense for a spin for the first time today against Ohio State. It was our week 2 game. Week 1 was a bye because I wanted to schedule them. Their only time to schedule them was week 2, 35-32. But like it was closer. The score was. It shouldn't have been that close. I threw 2 interceptions late. I got a 94 overall wide receiver. I don't know what to do. Like I just throw it to this guy all the time. He was a Heisman favorite before the season started. I'm like, oh, I'm feeding this guy. But then they have some exotic rushes. Like their offense style is, there's pro, there's in the game, there's spread, there's pro. Theirs is various or multiple or whatever. Like that's their offensive playbook. Is like multiple, like that's the name of it, which is cool. I'm just learning a lot about it. I found one play, Texas, that I love, where my
running back.
Yeah, well, I go to the receiver. I go to the receiver.
I feed that guy. I'm getting a Heisman winner on my resume.
He had 450 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, against Ohio State. Yeah, but other than that, man, I did go outside today. I with all the rain that we've been having, I pulled some weeds in the evening while my daughter, our neighbors, their grandkids are here. So they're my daughter's age. So she was playing with them. We picked her up from daycare early, and I was pulling weeds. But I just went inside and grabbed a Mick Ultra, and I'm like, it's just going down real smooth. And then I had another, and now I picked up some great tasting, less filling. But I have one of these Voodoo Ranger Peach Forces left in the fridge. My God, are these delicious! So I'm sucking that down here, and then we're gonna get on the great tasting, less filling, and then we're gonna play UCF in Miami, and then we're gonna get into our SEC schedule. So,
yeah. Well, cheers to all of that.
Cheers to all of that, indeed.
Okay, so today, Southeastern Conference. This is typically a very great an elite conference. It typically is an elite conference. Last year was just great, which threw, I think, a lot of people off with a lot of predictions. Besides someone here, and so and just before, actually, you know what? We'll talk about the 2023 results. So this was Alabama and Georgia. Shocker. In the SEC championship game, this is the last East-West. Nowhere left for Georgia to hide. Not that they need to anymore. But it was just, I feel like a classic game, right? 27-24 Alabama. They were the underdogs. I don't think a lot of people thought that they would beat Georgia, even though Georgia wasn't necessarily like what they the national championship team or the runner-up team wasn't as strong because of all the players that they had lost. But it was just a classic. Bama last year was just zombie Bama. It wasn't the same Bama, but they just wouldn't die and found their way all the way to the playoff and all the way to a 4th down, in the 10 on the 10-yard line, play. I don't mean to rehash this. I hope it's time. But.
No, I mean, it is what it is, right? Like I think after that Texas game last year, what was the South Florida game?
Yeah,
where I was like, I just don't know what's going to happen with this team. I do think that they got a lot better as the year went on. I think that this was Saban's best coaching year. I think he went out. He's like, I can't do this shit anymore. He's like, that was hard. Yeah. I coached my ass off. I brought these guys up by their bootstraps and made them look good. And we got done. It's just, I think that they just, I talked about in every episode, there's teams that reload, right? But they were like so good. And it's like, how do you reload that talent that they had a couple years ago? How do you reload a wide receiver room of Slim and Waddle and Ruggs and Jude? Like, how do you do that? How do you reload Najee Harris, right? After, reloading Derrick Henry, after, it's just one after another. And yeah, I think that they figured themselves out later in the year. I think they were dangerous. I think it would have been very interesting to see. Think about this. Imagine if they would have won against Michigan, and then they play Washington. Is Kalen DeBoer still your new head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide this year?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah. Because, I mean, Washington could have very well won that game, too, you know? So, like, yeah, it would probably be very hard for DeBoer to have stayed. Maybe Saban. Well, I think if Saban would have won, it would be even more reason for him to leave, right? Like, go out on top. That was the biggest shocker. I didn't think he'd leave after losing a bowl game. I thought he'd go out after a win, but
Yeah.
the guy's done it all. So,
Right.
anyways.
And just a reminder of our predictions from last year. You had correctly picked this conference. You picked Alabama over Georgia. I had taken LSU over Georgia. My line of thinking was that there was going to be an elite SEC team that comes out of it. I didn't think that was going to be Bama. I guessed wrong with LSU. While they were a juggernaut on offense and have immense talent on defense, it just didn't work out.
Yeah, to be fair,
Brian Kelly killed the kid. So
yeah, Brian Kelly did kill a kid. No one could have seen the defense being that bad.
I believed in the family, and I was just kind of wrong, right? This was like I said, not an elite year, a great year, and Bama was the one to come out of it, and like I said, took the eventual champions right down to the wire. So
since this is our last conference that we're previewing, and you know you're wrong here, let's take a moment to recognize that I did pick Utah over USC as my Pac-12 champions last year, which was just the wrongest as wrong could be, and you nailed. Or no, you said Oregon over Washington. Well, close enough. I mean, right? Or did you say the Huskies?
I had the Huskies, but I did think that Oregon was I had picked the Huskies, but as the season went on, I was betting
you switched. Yeah,
do it. Yeah.
That okay? Because at the end of the year, we were both on Oregon. I can't remember what you picked to start, so you nailed that. So let's just give you your flowers there for a moment. So.
I almost got the second one in too. Mine was Washington and Oregon State, and my Beavs were right there to the end.
Yeah,
just didn't quite have the offensive prowess to get past the Ducks at the end.
DJU lacking offensive prowess. Who would thought? Shocker.
All right, so before we get into this, can I just say, Mike, you are absolutely glowing. Your hair looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Love the beard.
Thank you.
It's rocking. I mean, your shoulders just look real, firm and stiff. I don't know. They look great. So
thanks, man.
I wanted to start this on a good note.
I also have a new body wash that it's Buffalo Trace. It's what's the brand?
That's whiskey.
Yeah, no, it's a Buffalo Trace body wash. Yeah, I just bathe in Buffalo Trace. I'm immensely
the brown
wealthy.
Juice.
Yeah, I'm immensely wealthy. No, it's one of those. I'll figure Dr. Squatch or something. Yeah. They do a Buffalo Trace one. It doesn't so much smell like Buffalo Trace, but what it does smell like is when you're out camping and you're with the boys and you're having a good time. It's the first cigarette that you had, the first pull of the first cigarette that you have on the deck.
Yeah,
that's what it smells like. Not like when you wake up the next morning, all this. The first pull of the first cigarette while you're camping. That's what it cabin like with the boys. That's what it smells like. Are you also buttering me up just because you're gonna like absolutely like disappoint the hell out of me?
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I just want to start this on
fair enough.
A good note.
Fair enough. I am wearing my.
Yeah, I see that.
My Roll Tide gear. Shout out Home Field again. Another one of their shirts. So
I see that.
Here we go.
How do you want to do this?
Well, I honestly, man. So I have. Let's start with the pretenders again, and then we'll get to the dark horses, and then we'll go to our contenders. Because my contenders, there's probably three. I have four, but like probably three, realistically two. So
okay. All right. Why don't you start with your pretender?
I will. I will. Uh, we'll throw it back to we'll throw it back to someone who you were just talking about to win the conference last year, LSU. I think that their ceiling is 9 wins. When you look at their total, I think their total might be 8.5, 9.5, something like that. I'm not betting it because like it's super close, but I think that their ceiling is 9 wins. Um, they are, reloading as best they can to replace the number one offense in the nation. They got Garrett Nussmeier in. They got a trio of wide receivers and Hilton, Lacey, and Anderson. Mason Taylor, the tight end. 4 stars returning on the O line. The question is, can Blake Baker fix them, right? Because they also lose, an offensive coordinator, right? So, can they get fixed, or can they, do what they need to do to improve on last year? Like, how do you? I don't know how they replace that productivity that they have. I don't know how they get really like the offensive productivity that they're losing is one thing for sure. How do they figure out what's happening on defense? Like, how do they turn things around there? And Baker, man, he has quite the task in front of him. He did turn Mizzou around, right? But I don't know, man. They were just so bad last year. Like, I think he'll probably figure things out for them, but I don't think that this is going to be the year that Baker's able to figure things out for them on defense. So therefore, I'm thinking that they are going to have, and just looking at the schedule too, it's not super tough. But that middle of the season just looks like a real grind. Like when you get past their first, they got 5 games that they should win at the beginning of the season. When you get past that first bye, they're just going to be grinding out the rest of the way. I think it's a 9-win ceiling for them. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a pretty big step back because I think they'll turn things around on defense, especially, but eventually, but not right now. So that's my view on the Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's one of those things. I agree with you. I mean, they win. I mean, what did they go last year? 9-3. Before winning their bowl games. So, I just think like, and they didn't look always great doing it, but they just got saved by, the second overall pick, the sixth overall pick. I think Thomas got drafted at the bottom of the first round. So it was just a really prolific offense. And while the defense is talented, like Harold Landry, is that the name, right? I feel like I always mix up his first and last name. He should. It looks like they're moving him, like you said, or Perkins, not Landry. I knew it wasn't Landry. Harold Perkins. So went from like the SEC freshman of the year, took a step back last year. It looks like they're kind of moving him into a different position. So it's not like they won't have talent, but I agree with you. I think like if this team only went 9-3 last year, and that was because of a prolific offense, that offense is going to take a bit of a step back. And then even if the defense gets a little better, I just have a hard time seeing it be any better than 9-3. So yeah. I'm with you there.
Yeah. Gonna be some tough sledding in Baton Rouge this year. I think they'll come out hot. They'll be looking good, but then with that schedule, obviously it's easy to say. But then it's gonna be tough for them.
Yeah, definitely.
So, all right, what do you got? Who's one of your pretenders?
So I have one.
One?
Yes. Because there are some teams that I just don't necessarily think like beyond LSU. I'm not sure that there were any that like. I guess like I see pretender as like have a realistic chance at competing, and I'm not sure that some of these other ones do. I think there's a pretty core, 5 or so teams, and then you have LSU being, was in the mix last year, not necessarily as we just talked about this year. So I have one. I have one of those top 5 that I think is just below everyone else, and I just want to caveat this that pretender's probably not a fair term. I think it's just a cut below the other ones as far as true contention.
I know,
and it's Alabama, and I think the biggest things for me are, while I actually didn't really love Milroe last year, I actually do have a lot more faith in him this year. I think it's the other pieces that are the problem. And I think the thing for me is, one, beyond the fact that Nick Saban's gone, and we truly don't know what this is going to look like without him. DeBoer has a track record, but like it's one thing to, get to a Washington and have a quarterback that's already been in your system. And it's a completely different thing to now bring a completely different system to the SEC, which doesn't necessarily run the same kind of offense that he has. So I just think one of the things is they're replacing all the skill players. And while the skill players last year weren't on the same tier as, like you said, a couple of the ones before, they're obviously talented and they're being replaced with umpteenth star players, but all of those star players are unproven players. So if you're replacing all of that with a new system, while some of them will hit, I would be shocked if all of them do, right? The best kind of combination of teams is usually ones that have a sprinkling of returning players, and I just think with Milroe losing both McClellan, Roydale Williams was both of his running backs, again replacing them with top 4 to 5 star guys,
former top 100 recruits, Justice Haynes and Jan Miller. Jan Miller's absolutely broken in NCAA. Just want to call that out too. So, if NCAA is anything at the football game,
and then it's the same thing on the receiving. Right, all the top 3 trio are all gone. And again, Alabama has 5 former 100 recruits, top 100 recruits.
You don't believe in the law firm of Prentice Law and Hale? Does that not sound like a law firm? Prentice Law and Hale.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
so it's just like, again, those are guys that didn't break the lineup in a very meh group of receivers. I do like Jeremy Bernard. I'm a little familiar with him because he was initially a Michigan State. He was there for a year. We were the ones that initially recruited him. So again, I just think like to expect all of them to hit in really their first time having major playing time, I'm a bit skeptical. Offensive line, it's very similar, but again, it's not that these guys are going to be bad. They're clearly being replaced by very talented players, and they all could hit. But I think it's just like the odds of all of them clicking in a brand new system after a legend leaves. And I do think there are going to be some pluses as far as team culture. With DeBoer over Saban, because Saban can
interesting.
Well, I do think in the sense of just like Saban can grind you down, right? Like his personality can grind you down. I think DeBoer's, even Milroe, it seems like DeBoer's are going to be
comments. Yeah,
are going to maybe be a little bit lighter, and maybe that will be a bad thing, right? Maybe that maybe Saban's success is because of how much he demanded, but I think it could also bring maybe some personalities out in a positive way for them.
I think it works for a guy like Milroe. I think that having he loves. I think by the end of the season he got used to. I think that's why, again, Saban coached the hell out of him, right? Like he progressed, right?
Sure.
I think that some people, like what he was able to bring out of like AJ McCarron, for example, right? Or Jake Coker. Well, no one. Like,
you know what he brought out of them? Julio Jones and
fair, right? And incredible running backs. Yeah, hand off the ball. Yeah, right. They're players. Right, well, with McCarron, yes. Yeah. Jake Coker made a lot of throws, but he also had Lane Kiffin designing his plays. Right, so and he had OJ Howard. They would start, and they'll just leave OJ Howard open. But okay,
and that just goes on, and then I think one of the bigger issues for me and hesitations is them changing their defensive base. So not only do you bring in a guy that I don't even know where Womack came from, South Alabama. Okay, like immediately, I don't care if you get a bunch of 5-star kids, like you go from South Alabama and formerly Indiana, and all of a sudden you're thrown at Alabama.
South Alabama we were just talking about them. They got
the USA, right? University of South Alabama. I think I'm nervous about a base change, like a scheme change, right? So now you're asking a complete from a 3-4 to a 4-2-5. You're also losing, all Americans, all SEC honors players, both safeties, all their entire secondary. Again, mind you, the players behind them are 4-star, 5-star kids. USC transfer. I don't know if you really want that, but after last year, but yeah, I get I don't think they're going to be like all of a sudden talent. The talent's not going to be poor.
Yeah,
no,
right.
But I would be hesitant on defense to expect all of them to click immediately in a brand new scheme change with brand new coordinators and a brand new language and all of that. And I just think like there is a decent amount of turnover on both sides of the ball, and I think it's I get nervous to expect all of them to immediately be like Bama ready, and that's what it is. I think it's because this is Bama. But like I said, I don't necessarily think I wouldn't call them a pretender because again, like I have them literally like one loss out of the top tier. But I just think like I think I like some of the other teams a bit more ahead of them as all.
It's fair. I get it, right? Like they lost, their top 2 running backs, their top 3 wide receivers. They lost their tight end. They lost on defense. They lost Caleb Downs. They lost Dallas Turner, Braswell. They lost
Kool-Aid, Terrion.
Kool-Aid. Yeah, they lost a lot for sure. Both to the draft and to transfers. Right. I'm not going to sit here and say that like. I don't wish Isaiah Bond and Caleb Downs for sure were still here. No longer have Julian Sand, the freshman freshman. Well, he's not freshman sensation yet, but high school sensation. And I'd also feel a lot better if Grubb was going to be our offense coordinator, right?
Yeah,
like that. I think
was kind of big.
Losing that sucks. Yeah. That being said. I still think that until proven otherwise, Alabama has to be considered a contender in the SEC. And I have them at the bottom tier of contender because there are 3 other teams in particular that I think are in a much better position than them right now. But there's just a lot of unknowns, right? And I do think, they do have a lot of departures, but they still have a lot of strong pieces here. Like, Ryan Williams, 5-star recruit, number 1 wide receiver coming out. Like that guy's going to be a stud. You talk about star power, the wide receiver position, you're getting it there, right? Jeremy Bernard coming in from Washington. I think that's going to be huge. The offensive line should be solid. Like they have been solid. They should be solid. Plus they get Parker Brailsford coming from Washington. I think that's huge, right? Again, if they had Grubb, as their offensive coordinator, I think they'd be in much better shape. I do think that there's going to be some growing pains. There's going to be some issues. And the big thing I want to say is that on defense, right? Like, I do think, like, yes, there's a lot of talent coming in. I really like that Deontay Lawson. I think he's going to be able, the linebacker position is going to be kind of the core of that defense, holding it together, along with Smith and Keenan, their defensive tackles coming back, because traditionally with Bama, that defense really, like, they've had a lot of great linebackers. Like, they're going to miss Dallas Turner for sure. Had a lot of great linebackers over the years. They've had a lot of great secondary, especially I think switching to a 4-2-5, they will go as the defensive line goes. And when you have Smith and Keenan anchoring the defensive line, I think that's going to be pretty huge for them. I'm not taking their win total because with a lot of other teams, it's just too many question marks for me to bet on that. That being said, I am cautiously optimistic when I look at their schedule. They might not make it to the SEC championship game, but I mean, the schedule looks pretty good. Georgia, obviously the last week of September, that's going to be tough. I am not worried about the third Saturday in October this year. I think that's going to be, and I mean, they really don't have a ton of, I would say I would be very sad. They play Tennessee on the road, LSU on the road, Oklahoma on the road. It is kind of a tough schedule. At Tennessee, Mizzou at home, bye at LSU, Mercer at Oklahoma, Auburn. That's a pretty tough end to the season there. But who knows? I mean, I look at that schedule. It's like, shoot, they could be 9-3. They could be, 6-6. So we'll see what happens. But I understand why you picked them as an overrated team. I have cautious optimism because if I don't, I will die. So.
That's fair. All right. Do you have any more pretenders?
I do.
Okay.
After I finish my beer. Here. All right. So I would say this is definitely I have two. One I might breeze over because I don't think they're really a pretender. I think they kind of like are where they are.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have them on your list at all. If you feature them, do you talk about the Texas A&M Aggies at all? Yeah, I'll just breeze through it real quick because I don't think that they're a pretender. They're at 8.5 wins, right? That's their win total. I'm kind of like back and forth on taking that 8.5 wins, but like 9's the number I keep getting to. Like they have Elko coming from Duke. They're returning their offensive line. They have a good running game. Defense should improve. And I think that they're going to get some people, but like the first year in a program makes me nervous with anyone, right? Makes me nervous with the Boar. I think Elko is going to do good things, but A&M's College Station isn't Duke. So I think it's definitely wait and see mode with the Aggies. I think there's some people that are expecting big things from them. I'm not yet. And then my other overrated team, who I would not be surprised if they're one of your dark horses or maybe a contender, is the Vols. I think it's a 9-win season for them. Like Josh Heupel certainly has things going. Can he take the next step? It is certainly an all-name team with Nico Amaliva. I'm not. I don't think I'm pronouncing that the right way, but Amaliva throwing to Squirrel White. What a combo right there. You got Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton. It's going to be quite the pass attack. But they have some holes to fill all over the defense. Their defensive line, they kept everyone there, so they should be fine. But they've got holes all over that defense, and that schedule is pretty tricky. So what they got? They start off pretty good, but then at Oklahoma, the bye, at Arkansas, that's not a problem. But then Florida comes in, Bama comes in, then they got Kentucky, Mississippi State, who I don't know, man. I just don't want to play Mississippi State in November, something about them. And then they go Georgia, UTEP, and Vandy. Like that, the beginning's easy, the end is easy, but that middle section right there, I feel like that, especially with the way Heupel has his team, they're kind of like up and down, up and down. So even if they do get a big win, I can see them disappointing. So I think that their ceiling is 9 wins, which takes them. I think there's some people looking at Tennessee as like they could take the next step this year and get things going with what Heupel's built. Not me. Out on the balls. Surprise, surprise. Roll Tide. And Tennessee too.
Yeah, I'm the exact opposite of you. This is my dark horse, and I'll tell you why. And it's not. That's why I wanted to butter you up, because not only am I talking
you hate Bama, you love the Vols. Yeah.
Now I'm talking up the Vols. I mean, if you were to ask most people, was Tennessee successful last year? Most would just say, like, of course not, right? But I would say most people would not be like, after what Hendon Hooker did and Jalen Hyatt in that season, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people saw Tennessee as like a big step back last year, and it just wasn't the case, right? Like that offense, when it didn't rank number 1 like it did in 2022, it also was pretty top 10 for taking a step back. And I don't think it can be understated how much better of a quarterback that Nico Iamaleava is over Joe Milton, right? Like Joe Milton he can throw a football like DeMarcus Russell style.
Joe Milton can throw a football quarter mile over that mountaintop over there.
Yes, he can.
He'd won state if Coach will put him in.
But he can't throw a 5-yard out. So I think, I mean, you have Nico was the number 1 rated quarterback in 2023. He got some time last year. And I think when Heupel had his star quarterback like he did with Hooker, the offense absolutely shined. And I think this year he has that, right? And I think 2 of the biggest issues that they had last year on offense was pass protection and receiver consistency, and a lot of that was due to injury, and those players aren't injured anymore. So they have their top receiver back who was injured for most of the season last year. Like you said, they do have someone named Squirrel. And just like after reading it, like because of the up tempo, typically they don't do a lot of subbing. They really want to keep 3 receivers on the field at all times and just run with those. But they also do have some really good depth this year behind those trio that all got valuable starting playing time last year. And again, with a far inferior quarterback, and they do bring in Brazel from Tulane, who earned all American honors as a freshman at Tulane, and then also a 5-star receiver that picked them over Georgia and Ohio State. The offensive line, it's 3 starters, including an all-SEC center. They also have a 7th-year tackle. They also have former transfers. They did lose 1 transfer to Kentucky, a guard, brought in a better one, it was a tackle, brought in a better tackle from LSU to replace him. And last year, believe it or not, they rated in a top 10 in run offense. So if you can just get their middling pass protection to, which obviously the offense was still like a top 12 offense without it, I think being a lot healthier and having that 5-star arm, I guess technically Milton was probably a 5-star too, but a much more promising actual, like, didn't transfer 3 times arm. I think this is just, I think Heupel's offense is going to be back. And then as far as the defense goes, I mean, I'm with you about the secondary, and that's probably why I don't have them as a contender, because that secondary is a complete rebuild. But that defensive line is right.
Yeah, defensive line's great. Right.
Is arguably one of the best defensive lines in all of college football.
Agreed.
Headlined by their defensive end, James Pierce. A lot of people have already had him, top 10 NFL prospect. If not, sometimes he's been top 5. Obviously, it's a little early to be too excited about that. But Tennessee last year produced a school record of 36 sacks, 100 plus tackles for losses. Their defensive coordinator Banks runs a 10 to 12 man rotation, and that almost the entire group is back. And they do have their linebacking core. They had one of their key guys that missed all of last year back. Obviously, his replacements got valuable time last year and are ahead of schedule. And then all 5 starters in the secondary are gone, and there's big questions there. I will say one of their key transfers in was actually a player I really loved and was really hoping Michigan State could have snuck away from Oregon State when he left. But they had an all-freshman corner, Jermod McCoy, who was incredible for that.
I love that you're so in tune with the Beavs.
That was because, especially when Jonathan Smith goes to Michigan State, you start thinking, okay, who can he bring? Obviously, probably more offensive players because he was able to take the offensive coordinator and a lot of the offensive assistants. But their defensive coordinator stayed put. So, but he was one of the ones. McCoy was one of the ones where I remember he was he's skinny. I'm sure he's hopefully put on some weight. He was like $150 wet, but he was still a sticky corner, and he was getting his nose onto the ball. I absolutely loved him, and I think he's going to be fantastic.
I love you. I just want to point out that in our friendship, I think it was either 2014 or 2015. God, what year did? It was the year that Alabama, their defense was so good. It was Jonathan Allen. It was right before Payne. or Payne might have been there. Jonathan Allen was a senior. I think it was like 2014 or 2015. We went to a bar in Clarendon for someone's birthday. I want to say Bridget's, and we got like there was the champagne with the sparklers. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah,
I got a fight with Kara, and like you were talking me through it. I'm like, man, I'm just watching the Pac-12 right now. Like it was. I'm like, I don't know if you know, man, but like Cal is playing Stanford right now. So like I'm just trying to watch the Pac-12. I'm like I'm not worried about this fight. We're gonna get past it. Spoiler alert, we did. But like that was me all those years ago with the Pac, and now here you are. In the last year of the Pac, turned into the biggest super fan, talking about a freshman corner who could have done major things at Michigan State, wishing that they would have. I love you so much, man. I love you. I'm so glad that you got on the Pac-12 hype train right before it ended. So
yeah, I was late to it, no pun intended, or a little pun intended, after dark. But it was an absolute joy. I do get to go to some former Pac-12 stadiums this year, which I am beyond excited for.
Well, one former Pac-12 and one Pac-2. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to figuring out a way to bring you all with me. But yeah, I just think when it comes to Tennessee, I'm putting my eggs in Nico's basket that Heupel's offense is going to be top 5, and then I think the defensive. I'm banking
top
the
defensive.
Top 5 just offense, just top 5
of the NCAA, the National
Correct.
Collegiate Athletic Association men's football.
Yes, when they were number 1 2 years ago. So remember that when they number 1, I believe that was the last time Bama went to Tennessee. Okay. So in my calculus, they lose to Georgia. I think they beat Alabama, and I don't think anyone else gives them too much of a trouble if Nico turns out to be who Nico is, and it's a big question mark, right? You never know with quarterbacks, but a lot of my picks this year have these young, uber talented, likely to have their name called very early in the NFL draft in their second seasons, taking some steps forward. And Heupel's a proven offensive mind, even when he doesn't have a good quarterback. This year, I think he has it. I think the defense's front 7 is good enough and their offense to just outpace most teams. When they come against a true passing attack, they're going to struggle. But I just don't see too many pure passing attacks on their schedule. And yeah, so that's where I have them. I think they're a dark horse. I think they have a chance to be 1 or 2, maybe one key win and a slip up from someone else away from being like a technicality in, right? Like maybe it always happens, right? There's sometimes you'll have someone that gets in a conference championship. Yeah. Like similar to Oklahoma State last year, because of a couple of things here and there that happened, but that's just how I see the Vols. I'm sorry.
So no, don't apologize. I want to say this. I have 8 teams that I've highlighted for the Pick 6 preview for the SEC. We talked about all the other conferences, and we were talking about like some dark horses, and we were talking about some overrated folks. It's like it was. All those other conferences, I feel like it's pretty clear who the top team is. So in the Big Ten, it's like, okay, it's clear who's going to be in the championship game. In the ACC and the Big 12, it's like, okay, this one team should definitely be there. And there's a bunch of other teams who could get there, and then some teams that could surprise. But we're just talking within the conference. The 8 teams that I've highlighted within my preview for the SEC all could be in the CFP. I feel they could all get into the playoff and win a game.
Yeah,
that's how strong this conference is this year. I feel like, and so whenever I say Tennessee is overrated, that's because I don't see them getting to the championship game, and I don't see them getting in the CFP. Just because I feel like that there are 3 teams in particular that I think there's 4 teams that are better than them, but I think that there are 3 teams for sure that are better than them. Bama is the 4th one who's, I understand we've talked at length about the question marks there, but when I I'm kind of hedging against myself that they do go 11-1 this year, end up in the championship game, end up in the CFP. It's not like, well, Mike thought they were going to go 6-6. Not saying that, especially when you look at their schedule. I will say though, with Heupel, I think he's one of those guys. We talked about this with Gundy, who does a lot better in an underdog role than the catbird seat. I will say that. I think if things are going his way and things are going really good, that's where I think that things are going to start to tumble. And just looking at their schedule, I see some traps in there. I'll just say that, and I'll leave it there. And that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah.
In the words of
I think this is, for me, and this is going to be a theme for the rest of this preview is schedule really mattered to me. And if this game was in Tuscaloosa, my picks are probably flipped. But I think it's going to really matter in this SEC who has, a lot of these teams have to play each other now. I think it's really going to matter who's at home for a lot of these games. And in this particular case, their two hardest games, one of them's at home, one of them's on the road. I think they can, in this case, I think they can beat the team that's, coming to them, especially since it is such a big rivalry too. So that adds an extra layer of things. But yeah, I think this is, again, this entire conference, every team I'm talking about today, it's literally just a game or two away from things changing completely. So okay, your dark horse.
Yes, my dark horse. I actually really like this. I think the way that you feel about Tennessee is the way I feel about my dark horse. And I will take the Mizzou Tigers, and I will put in a ticket for over 9.5 wins for them. Eli Drinkwitz, just plain and simple, is the man. Brady Cook runs a very veteran offense for Mizzou. Throwing to a stud wide receiver, Luther Burden, who should be an All-American. What I really like here is that they get some running back help from the Fun Belt and Marcus Carroll from Georgia State and Nate Knoll from App State. So I really like that combination there coming in. I think that the Sun Belt is definitely the strongest, in my opinion, the strongest group of five school, especially when it comes to some skilled positions and their running backs. Like, I feel like those teams that are the best, they always have like a really strong running back there. I think they're getting two strong ones in. They do have a lot to replace on defense, as they had 5 guys that were drafted. That being said, though, I think that when you look at their schedule, as you just said, EJ, like, schedule's a big thing here. It is really easy to see 10 wins for them. And if they can win at Bama or A&M, I mean, watch out for the Tigers, man. So, just going through, they've got Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, Vandy. So that should be 4-0 through the bye. At A&M, toss-up. At UMass, Auburn, at Alabama, bye. Oklahoma, at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, Arkansas. So, obviously going to College Station, going to Tuscaloosa is going to be tough. I should say Stadium Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium. That will be tough. That being said, that's 9.5 wins. Yeah, I'll take it. That's 10 wins right there for sure. And if they can get A&M or they can get Bama, they're looking pretty good. I know that there are some holes on defense here, and that certainly, that certainly is tough for them. But Drinkwitz, man, I'm drinking Drinkwitz in the Kool-Aid. So,
yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think when I was looking at Missouri, I think I was hesitant. Obviously, they've had success pulling running backs like Cody Schrader. I think was Division II star, ended up walking on and being the SEC's leading rusher. Like, it was such a great story for him. So I do have confidence that they know how to pick them from there. I just think it was the defense, but I think you're right. It's not only just that they lost quite a few top NFL talent. They lost their offense or the defensive coordinator. So but I do think their schedule is the equalizer there. So I think where I guess I didn't really look close enough at that schedule, but I'm kind of with you there where maybe my hesitations on defense, you know, you went through
Who's going to beat them?
schedule, right? Like
beat
it's like you said, like it could be mean that like A&M might be more on their level, so it might be hard to go to College Station. Not sure about Auburn this year. But I couldn't tell you definitively that A&M's that much better or that Auburn's that much better or that Oklahoma or South Carolina. I feel pretty confident that Mississippi State and Arkansas are worse. So I'm with you. A couple of those games go their way and they're going to have something to say by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, the two toughest are A&M on the road and Bama on the road. Like they get Auburn and Oklahoma, they're going to be like middling. They're going to get some people here and there, but they get both those teams at home. So, I feel pretty good about the Tigers, man. I think that I think 9.5 wins. I'll take that for sure. I'll take that all day. And it's a veteran offense. So if they're going to get in a track race with anyone, I think they'll be in okay shape. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any more? Because I'm only down to the 3 contenders for me.
Yeah, 3 contenders, and I would assume we have the same 3 contenders.
Yeah, I would assume so. They're the
3
with the best odds.
I just went. You want to go first?
Sure.
Yeah.
We'll just start with Georgia, right? So they
Thank you for doing that. Thank you.
Widely considered the number 1 team in the nation. I think one thing I forgot to mention that the SEC is this year, and it makes it really hard because a lot of these teams have to play each other, so not all of them are necessarily going to make the playoff, although we will see, because I have a feeling that the 2 big dog conferences might pull a bit more teams than people think into the playoff just because of what they've built as far as the strength of schedule. So, but this is the conference of returning quarterbacks. I think that's always what you want to look for in a national champion. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy was a full-time starter the year before. Controversies aside, they had a very veteran team, and
it's very mature of you.
I don't want to derail this conversation any longer than it has to, but this conference is full of them, right? Carson Beck's one of them. Jalen Milroe is another. We're going to talk about Jackson Dart. We're going to talk about Quinn Ewers. Like this, unfortunately, all of them are in the same conference and have to all play each other. But it starts with Carson Beck. Got huge 5-star kid, beat out Vandegrift, the other 5-star kid, to replace Stetson Bennett. Had a pretty good year last year. Now he's, a Heisman candidate, probably at the moment a favorite to win Heisman. Had almost 4,000 yards passing, complete 72% of his passes. This is going to be a very similar thing to Bama in the sense that, like, while they're losing a lot of their starters, they're replacing them with either top transfers or top recruits. So they lose their long time 1-2 punch in the backfield with Dejon Edwards and Kendall Milton, but they get Trevor Etienne. Travis is that the brother?
I always assumed they were related, Trevor and Travis, but
yes, they are.
Yeah. Okay, then Trevor is who is the transfer. Yes,
from Florida. Travis's little brother, who is in Jacksonville. So he was top 10 in yards and carry in the SEC. Also have a guy in Branson Robinson that was expected to be in the lineup last year, got hurt. He'll be returning, and then the number 1 running back in the entire 2024 recruiting class, Nate Frazier, and then another top 200 guy from 2023. So
can I just say about Nate Frazier real quick, just to jump in before you get to other side of the ball or other offensive weapons? There's a picture out there of Nate Frazier that's like, it's very reminiscent of, there's a former Big 12 player. I don't want to say his name or his school because he was found guilty of beating women, so I want to give him a publicity. But there's a picture of him back in the day, a meme that went viral of him just like completely jacked, right? And that's like the Nate Frazier picture is like he's just jacked after a workout, like 19 years old, 18 years old, but like a man. And it's like there's kids out there that really think that their kids can. There's parents out there that really think their kids can go pro in athletics. When this guy's walking around, it's just like it's insane how jacked he is. So, go ahead, please continue with the Georgia Bulldogs, though.
Yes. They lose their two of their top four receivers. Obviously, the big one is Lad McConkey. Dude's amazing. I think he's going to be a fantastic pro. He's just that perfect slot receiver that has enough
lighting it up in camp too.
Because he just is such a good route runner and reliable, and that's all you need. He kind of reminds me of even like a sharper Amon Ra, right? Where he's not going to kill you with his size, he's not going to kill you with his speed, but he just gets open and he catches.
Sun God almost got killed in practice this week.
You
see that?
Yeah. Oh, of course, it was a brawl, but I will say, man, they ain't going to back down, and you can see that. But you lose him, but they do have Dominic Lovett, who was the top Mizzou guy that kind of left before. Burden, is that what it? Burden?
Yeah, Burden. Mm-hmm.
Luther Burden. Yeah. So he didn't get too much playing time last year, but he'll be the top dog. Was supposed to be a good duo with Ra Thomas, but he got dismissed from the program after some felony charges this offseason. So
slip that on there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll just leave it at that. But also, along with Lad McConkey, they lose their out of this world tight end and Brock Bowers. They do replace him with the number one tight end prospect of 2022, Oscar Delp, who did get some playing time when Bowers was hurt and played well. So
it's not even him. I'm actually excited for the tight end transfer from Stanford, right? Yeah, Urasek from Stanford.
Yeah,
I think he's going to make some noise. So
okay,
it's smart.
Right.
Probably is their designated driver now. So
for sure. And then the offensive line, I mean, they've had 3 straight Joe Moore.
I assume he's a white boy. I don't even know, but with a last name like Urasek, you got to be white. Come on, and you're from Stanford. Don't let me down. Don't. Okay, cool. I'm not racist. He is white. So there we go.
So the offensive line has been, a finalist for the best offensive line 3 straight years. Probably going to be a 4th. They do lose 2 first-rounders. They're going to replace but otherwise they have the 3 starters, 4 backups that played in the games. I mean, again, they're going to be too deep. They're going to be fine replacing those players there. Top 5 defense last year, and it was kind of a changing of the guard. So
they have an all SEC player. They have Nazir Stackhouse as their nose tackle.
Yep.
They have Michael Williams. They have Mond at linebacker, and they have Starks at free safety. All SEC players at every level of the defense. And they signed the number 1 safety and the number 1 DB in the class. So,
even though they lost, this was a year actually they've only lost 4 defenders to the draft. Last year was kind of a change in the guard, but they still played great defense. Mike, you just outlined why that defense is going to be nasty again this year. I have some schedule questions, but we can get to that in a little bit. What about the next contender?
No, do you want to get to schedule now? Because I have them at over 10.5 wins. So, and I have them as a CFP. Well, you know what? Yeah, let's maybe get to the schedule. I just looked at the schedule. I
have them under.
You have under 10.5 wins.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
It is.
I have Georgia over 10.5 wins, SEC champs, CFP champs. They will be my pick to win the SEC. We'll spoiler it there, but I like your sizzle there. Gosh, do I talk about my favorite coach, favorite active coach, or do I talk about my favorite I can't even say non-SEC. My favorite non-Crimson program. Tough decision. You know what? Let's do it. Hook 'em horns. Let's talk about the Longhorns, baby. I have a lot to say about them. So, first off, just an incredible farewell to the Big 12 for them. They just barely couldn't get it done though, in two of the most meaningful games, that being the Red River Shootout and obviously in their bowl game against Washington. But however, that being said, they are recruiting very well, and they are also picking up transfers from the portal very, very well. The most interesting thing here, I think, is that like Quinn Ewers is definitely a Heisman contender. But like, you got Arch Manning waiting there, and it's really, really interesting. I think that's gonna be really interesting how things go, because Ewers, came into last season as a totally different player, shaved his head, very serious, not the same guy that we saw, doing all of the stunts that he was doing, coming out of high school and everything like that. Like, he's taking football very seriously. But you got Arch Manning there, and the patriarch of that family does not probably want his grandson just sitting around. So that, I think, will be very interesting. How often, though, do you lose 3 wide receivers to the NFL in Worthy, Wington, and Mitchell, and replace them with the number 1 wide receiver off 3 different teams? They get Isaiah Bond from Bama, they get Matthew Golden from Houston, and they get Silas Bolden from where, EJ?
Oregon State, and that dude is that's going to be a really interesting. I don't know much about Matthew Golden, but Bolden is very similar to Bond. He's a very small guy, but he can be used in all different parts of the offense, running the ball, jet sweeps. He's small, so he's not winning jump balls, but he's aggressive. He's not going to back down from anything. Again, he was someone that I really wish would have made his way to East Lansing. Clearly, he got a better offer to go.
They got to hand out more Lamborghinis in East Lansing. That's the case.
Silas Bolden is going to be someone that people probably don't know much about, but you're going to find out.
You're going to learn today, yes. And that trio does not even include Jonte Cook and Ryan Wingo, who are very strong. Instead of 1 stud running back, they have 2 with CJ Baxter and Jade Blue. They get Amari Niblack as well from Alabama, who's the tight end, who had again came on strong last year. And they have 4 starters returning on a very beefy, very strong offensive line. On defense, they do return 7 starters, but they lose Sweat, they lose Murphy at defensive tackle, and I think in this defense, much like Alabama, a lot of it goes the way the defense, the inside, the interior of the defensive line goes. But they got Savea and Norton from Arizona. Trey Moore is an edge coming from UTSA. They have a 5-star coming in, Colin Simmons. So there is a lot of bodies that are coming to help them out. Anthony Hill Jr. was a stud freshman All-American at linebacker, and then they've got Barron holding that secondary that definitely does need to improve if they're going to take a step forward. It is a tough schedule, however. They have the Red River rivalry and Georgia back-to-back, so it is definitely a tough schedule for them. That being said, I am also taking the over of 10.5 wins with Texas, and I'm putting in a CFP or SEC championship ticket. And I'm putting a CFP championship ticket. So both for Georgia and for Texas, same bets. Over 10.5 wins to win the SEC, to win the CFP. Gonna have a lot of CFP tickets out there. What can I say? I want to have some stake in it. So,
and I just want to also say, I'm not sure that you touched on is the offensive line. Last year was a bit of a question mark going into the season because of the youth, but it was a pleasant surprise. Not even a surprise. They lived up to the bill. 4 of those guys are coming back.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So that's going to really help them on offense. And then there's a power stat here. And because one could argue when they could have looked even better at times had Sark not lost his mind in games at times. So here's the power stat for you. Sarkisian said his opening play script is 40 plays, right? So that's more than double most, right? Texas ranked 50th in QB rating in the first half of games because of his 40 play script, but that rose to 10th after halftime. So if Sark can get out of his own way at times and quit being stubborn, especially when it comes to trying to finish games, that was already a fantastic offense. We talked about why it's going to be a great
That's
offense.
a crazy statistic. It's like I have a script. It's like Denzel in Remember the Titans. 5 play split B, just like Novocaine. Give it time, always works. Except it actually does not work. We need to get past your first 40 plays, and then you just need to start balling out, man.
Yeah. So if he changes his approach, this already really great offense can be elite. So again, I hope he figures it out, because there were definitely times where that offense scuttled unnecessarily, and a lot of that was kind of on him.
The goal line series of plays against Oklahoma last year will just always live in my mind. Like why hand it to, like, why have your D tackles in there for that run play twice, or was it 3 times? I don't know. It was just so stupid, but that cost them the game for sure. So
yes, definitely.
All right, our last, unless anything else about the Longhorns, or should we get to our last contender?
Let's get to our last contender.
All right. Do you want to take the honors, or would you like me to?
I do. I just wanted to find something here. Yes. So I just want to say that I'm all aboard. I'm all aboard on this team. I'm all aboard. I think I told you this weeks ago. Digging into it deeper just puts me even further on board of the Lane train. I think this is the year. I think this is the year. This is the year. I think this is the year for the Lane train, and I'm going to tell you why. So Lane Kiffin is obviously brilliant offensive mind. They do have one of the returning quarterbacks, right? So he has a veteran quarterback in his system that was very successful in his system last year. And this is a team that returns 14. You won't call them starters, because obviously you can't start 14 players, but it's 14 players that got significant playing time on offense of an already top 15 offense and a top 10 passing offense. And they only lose 3 starters. They pulled 6 starters off of Power 5 offenses, including an all-SEC receiver and 2 linemen off of Washington's team. They literally took 2 of DeBoer's guys and from a conference and a former division rival. So it starts with Jackson Dart. He had 3,300 yards passing, 23 touchdowns, just 5 picks. He was the 6th best quarterback rating among all Power 5 quarterbacks. And he was also the only quarterback along with Matt Corral at Ole Miss to throw for 6,000 yards and run for 1,000 in a career. And he's on pace to become second on that leaderboard, only behind Eli Manning. The running backs, they stole the starter from LSU. He is rehabbing an injury, but the front of their schedule, they're not going to miss him if he does miss a couple of games. But they do have a speedy player in Ulysses Bentley that got some playing time last year, had a huge game winner against Arkansas last year. Their offensive line do have those departures, but they fill them with Washington offensive lineman who was a finalist for the best offensive lineman.
They won the Joe Moore.
I wasn't sure if it was Michigan or them. Yeah, so they won the Joe Moore, pulled 2 of those guys away from DeBoer, which is fantastic. And I would say while the offensive line last year for Ole Miss was middling, I wouldn't say they're terrible, but they weren't necessarily fantastic. But I think this is going to be a big bump for them. The receivers all went over 700 yards last year. The 3 starting receivers, 2 of them are back, and to replace the one, they bring in Juice Wells, who's an all-SEC receiver for South Carolina in 2022 before he got injured in 2023 and missed all of the year. You could argue that this is the best trio in the SEC. potentially in the entire NCAA. And then they also signed the number 1 overall JUCO prospect in Deion Smith to join that group. And then Kiffin went back to his OJ Howard days and featured a tight end in the bowl game and Prescorn, and he comes back. The dude had 10 catches, 136 yards, and 2 scores. So I believe he is going to have a great chance at a potential 2024 breakout season. But let's see. Let's be truthful here. Lane hasn't won the big games, and they don't win on the road, right? Especially the big games on the road. That was the problem last year. They lost 2 big ones on the road in Bama and Georgia, beat everyone else. This year, they don't have those teams on the road. They have those teams at Vaught Hemingway, and I think that is Vaught Hemingway, and I think that is a huge advantage for them. And the other thing is, it's typically been all gas on offense, which it's going to be potentially even more gas than usual. But this is the year they have a defense to couple with that. A huge infusion of talent. Also have their second-year coordinator, someone you might be very familiar with, and Pete Golding, which I feel like I can't remember if you've loved or hated him. I feel like you hated him at the end. I can't remember.
I think you can remember how I feel about Pete Golding. And not just at the end, the entire time.
Okay, that's what I thought. But they have 5 of their starters returning, and they added 5 starters off of a Power 5 lineups, headlined by Walter Nolan from A&M, who is the nation's second overall recruit in the 2020 recruiting class, and then the first overall transfer. They also bring in a 5-star defensive end, he is an instant, impact at defensive end as a 5-star. It's also joined by an all-SEC lineman from Florida, Princely Moon.
I got no idea.
Not in Gainesville anymore, who led their team in tackles for lost sacks and quarterback hurries. And that's already joining a stout duo of tackles that they already have in Ivy and Poogs, I believe. And he also just Golding likes to rotate players in and out. So they just have a few other guys.
Got that from?
Yeah. They also have a few other guys that can fill in, along with the number 1 recruit out of high school in defensive end, Cam Franklin. So they did lose some veteran linebackers, brought in the 3rd rated linebacker in Pooh Bear Paul from Arkansas, who is an absolute tackling machine and freshman All-American. And also he has a 5-star Perkins that's already flashed, being like more of a disruptive kind of strong side rushing type of linebacker. And they also have some key starters in the secondary returning in their safety in Washington, their slot corner and Saunders. Lawrence is coming from Oklahoma, Hamilton from Houston to bolster the secondary. And then the number 8 transfer corner and Trey Amos is also in rotation, was a rotation in Alabama, also projected to start at corner. But I just think this is finally the year that the stars align, because not only have they proven to have an offense, like I said, it's really big. I can't believe Judkins left, to be honest, to be backup to Henderson at Ohio State. That baffles me. But I think this is the year. I think Jackson Dart's going to have a huge year with those receivers, and I feel like this defense finally has a defense to back him up. And when I'm looking at the schedule here, I just think this completely favors how they usually play, right? They don't win the big ones on the road. Luckily, they don't have the big ones on the road, and they also don't really have as strong of a schedule as some of these other contenders. So you're looking at the schedule here. Hold on, let me pull it up. It is Furman, Middle Tennessee State, at Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, Kentucky, at South Carolina, and then potentially Death Valley, at Death Valley, right? That's a tough place to play. That's the one that I have kind of circled as a hesitation to me. Then you get a bye. Then it's Oklahoma at home. They don't lose at home, especially not to middling teams. At Arkansas, not a big deal. The big one for me, and this is where I'm going to be the one. I'm going out on a limb. They get Georgia at home, and I think this is the year. I don't think this is. It was really hard for me, and I'll just kind of segue into my picks. It was really hard for me to think that this is a Georgia team able to win 3 of the hardest games on the road. 3. I have them losing 2. And
whoa.
And it's like I said, for me, this is a schedule thing. Because then after Georgia they get a bye. I don't believe in Florida. I'm sorry, Billy Napier. I really thought you were going to be great, but you stink. And Mississippi State stinks. So I think this is the year that Vaught Hemingway, they get it done against Georgia. I think it's really, really hard to ask Georgia to not only beat Clemson, which we think is at least respectable at a neutral site, but then they have to go at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss.
So you think that Texas and Oklahoma get them both on the road?
Ole Miss, yeah. I think Texas.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, what I say, Oklahoma? Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think Texas and Ole Miss get them on the road.
Wow.
Because the crazy thing for me, and this is where I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, but like, as people talked about how great Carson Beck was last year, I don't remember thinking Carson Beck was.
No, I agree. I agree completely. I have no idea where this is coming from. No,
and then you lose Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers, and all of a sudden I'm supposed to expect that he's going to be good enough to win at least 2 of those 3 on the road.
It's the rushing game. It's their rushing attack is so much stronger than it was last year. Like that's for me what, because I agree. I don't buy into the hype, right? Around Beck, but I do think that with ETN and Frazier that like they're gonna be just fine, right? You have to honor that. Now, that being said, so I'm sorry. Was there anything else that you wanted to say about Ole Miss or heading into your picks? Because I have something else to say about Ole Miss. So
no, you can finish because I was gonna head right into my picks.
So I agree with everything you say about the offense. Jackson Dart, great wide receivers. You know, I'll just go back to my notes here. Priestcorn off two members of the Joe Moore winning offensive line. Awesome. My first note, I will read it verbatim for defense.
I hate Pete Golding.
Pete Golding. How will he screw this up? Question mark. Because he really should not with all of the talent that he has. But I'm just so curious as to how he's going to screw it up because he's going to screw it up. That's my thing about Ole Miss. I think that Lane Kiffin needs to just desperately find someone else, a defensive coordinator. I hope he does. I hope that they fire him this year and that, you know, they find someone else who's better. Maybe that'll be your next job offer, EJ. Who knows? But like, it's just he sucks. He's so bad. So for that reason, that I just know what Pete Golding brings to the table, and it's actually he taketh away. That I love Ole Miss. I think that I am definitely taking them at was it 9.5? Yep, gonna take them at 9.5. You're putting a CFP appearance for them too, because their schedule's just cake. But buddy, for me, of the teams we talked about, it's gonna be Georgia and it's gonna be Texas in the championship game. I just cannot see a way that Pete Golding allows them to get to the SEC championship.
I like I said, I just think I would have to believe that to survive this, Georgia can lose a game. And they not only have to play Clemson neutral, they have to go to Alabama, they have to go to Texas, they have to go to Ole Miss, and then they host Tennessee right after that. That is a murderer's row for a team that I didn't really believe in last year and was proven right no matter how much Kirby Smart bitches and complains about not being in the playoff. I see them losing too. And I think the 2 they lose is at Texas, and I think this is the year that Ole Miss gets it done. I think Ole Miss is going to be in the championship game, undefeated against Texas, undefeated, and I think Lane Train is winning the SEC, beating Texas, and getting. I mean, I would argue all three of these teams are still going to make the playoff. I might even sneak a fourth in.
Yeah, I'm there with you.
But I don't know. I just think this
but...
is. I just think this is stars aligned, nut up or shut up, and I think he knows that, and I think this is finally the schedule that can allow them to shine. But like I said, it's just it's a game or two away, right? If I'm betting they'll beat Georgia and not drop one at like an LSU, and I just think Georgia's not. I don't see them as elite enough to get through their schedule. So then if I'm dropping them out, who has to replace them? I think Texas is in a good spot to be there. But again, I think part of me with Texas makes me nervous is the fact that Sweat and Murphy were so dominant. And that's part of the reason why their pass defense was terrible, because teams didn't even try to run the ball. So while again, if these games were in Athens, it's a completely different story.
Yeah,
completely different. If it's the Longhorns going to Athens, don't think that's a win for the Longhorns. If it's definitely Ole Miss going to Athens, we saw what happened last year. Definitely not a win. But I think because these games are in Austin and at the Grove, I mean, imagine what the Grove's going to be like.
Oh yeah,
for that.
Katy Perry will be there all fired up. Yeah.
I don't know. A part of me is just like, I don't believe in Georgia, and I don't see where all of a sudden it's going to be any better than their team last year. And I can see, I can see where Ole Miss and Texas can compete with them, and they're the home field, they're the home team. So that's kind of where I'm going off.
Yeah. Well, man, I'll be honest. I hope you're right. In a year where I don't think Bama's making to the SEC championship, I would be tickled to see Ole Miss or Texas win the SEC. That being said, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be Georgia. Maybe that's more emotionally, me just preparing myself for what's going to happen. But I could see Georgia over Texas is going to be my selection. And there's there's also a part of me, the SEC traditionalist, who's like, we're already crowning Texas today. I mean, they ain't played nobody, Paul. They haven't played a game in the SEC yet. But I'll
tell you what,
pretty tough.
I'll tell you what, if you're going to take Georgia to win this conference, you better have them winning it all, because there's no way in hell I see them surviving that conference and not being the champion. Don't have to tell me now, but I'll tell you what, if they can navigate that, then they're the team for sure. That's how I see it.
I have no idea who's going to win it all. I have no
Me neither. I eventually haven't put that down, and I don't know about the group of five either, because I have a team that I wish the group of five teams could play each other, because I have a feeling the team that's going to get in isn't better than the team that's going to be right behind them, unfortunately, based on schedule.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. But that's for the next episode.
That is for the next
episode.
To
break that down. But okay, this was a long-winded one. It was always going to be, because this is finally where this conference is back to being elite. These are gonna what's kind of lost in this, and I don't think I fully grasped my mind around it, is these are going to be some fucking amazing football games.
Whether
I'm right or wrong about this, I am going to enjoy the hell out of Georgia at Texas, Georgia at Ole Miss, Georgia at Alabama, right? Alabama at Tennessee, Tennessee going to Georgia. I'm going to enjoy the hell out of all of this, and it's going to be a great season. A lot of these teams and all of these conference previews, the top dogs have to play each other once. A lot of them have to play each other once in the regular season. Could play each other up to 3 times. I'm all about it. As long as it doesn't end up like those stupid Bama LSU 10-9 teams. I'm all about it.
We will see what happens, man. I think that the SEC football is going to be super fun to watch this year. I think that this conference is very, very strong. And like I said, they have 8 teams. Like, of the 16 teams that they have, I think 8 of them have a realistic shot at the playoffs. So
yeah,
it's gonna be an interesting season, man.
Yeah, I'm interested to see both of our philosophy when it comes to picking these 12 teams. I'm excited for that.
Oh, let me know whenever you figure out what mine is. So,
all right. Thanks for sticking with us. I know this was a long one, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. And like we mentioned, we're going to have our big NFL college football playoff bracket breakdown. So we're going to tell you who our 12 are, and to our best of our knowledge, make up a bracket and whittle it down to 4, whittle it down to 2, and whittle it down to 1. And then we're going to be on to the first episode of Tales of the Trophy. And I can tell you that trophy it was serendipitous. It is the perfect trophy to start off with, as far as our final Power 5, grouping of trophies, or Power 4 grouping of trophies. I think it's a perfect one to start off with, so I'm excited about that.
hell yeah, man. Hell yeah.
All right, so for Mike, I'm EJ. Always remember, too much of anything is bad, but too much good whiskey is barely enough.
Cheers, boys.